Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
So being, in a sense, is the sense of awareness with, what is happening in this moment within myself and around myself. Because when you are that aware, you are witnessing your life, you are like experiencing your life. And that's what I call as being, like you are rooted in yourself. You are aware of everything that's happening. You could hear and see your kids coming in, talking and saying, despite of what is going in your head or in your work life. That is a being.
You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zaratny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome back to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, a productivity and accountability coach, here to help you simplify life without sacrificing what you love. And I'm so honored you're here with me. We're just coming off episode 100 and have hit 12,000 downloads, and that's because of you. My heart is filled with gratitude and peace in knowing I'm doing what's meant for me, and the timing of today's guest is serendipitous. I truly believe you're going to have quite a few ahas and some favorite phrases from today's conversation. When you do, will you please share them on social media and with me? Message me on Instagram at positively_Lisa and I'll reply directly. Today, I welcome Manpreet Bawa to the Positively Living podcast. Manpreet comes from an IT background where he spent over 20 years working with top-tier retailers across the world, raising millions in revenue. He's worked in many industries, with most of his focus in IT. But during COVID, like many of us, he had an epiphany that his IT dream had expired. Realizing he still has an impact to be made, he started his quest to reinvent himself. Since then, he's studied with mentors, facilitated workshops, been a guest on many podcasts, and launched his own. Manpreet is an example of someone who experiences a shift and genuinely seeks out others who would support him on his path. He became a big fan of the podcast and wanted to share his wisdom and experience with listeners. So he sent me a video message expressing his understanding of my mission and his desire to be a part of it. Despite being inundated with requests to be on the podcast, I saw his authenticity and genuineness. It shined through, and I'm delighted to welcome him on and introduce him to you. In a meta kind of way, it's a reminder of all we talk about here, to be intentional and purposeful and move forward seeking meaning in all you do. In addition to defining being and doing, Manpreet shares the one question to ask yourself in order to find the harmony between the two and to make your actions aligned and intentional. His advice helps us become witness to our lives and let go of the struggle that so often arises. I believe you'll find inspiration to shift your perspective and to take action from this episode, but I also think the conversation itself is one you will find calming and encouraging. Take a moment, sit back, and find the calm with us. Then take your next step and be sure to message me when you do so I can cheer you on. Welcome, Manpreet Bawa, to the Positively Living podcast. I am so delighted to have you here finally. It's going to be so good. I can already tell.
Yes, amazing. Thank you. And I've been looking forward to it, especially listening to your voice on your episodes. It just has, pulled me towards you like, okay, there is something special about this that I have to be there. So I'm so thrilled to be here equally.
I would love for you to start us off before we get into the topic of the day with a little bit more about who you are and, what your journey has been, who you are seeking to help and what is really lighting you up and that you're loving to do.
Sure. So I'm Manpreet. I grew up in India. I was born and raised in India. I moved to United States when I was 22 years old with big dreams. Like everybody moves to US, the land of dreams. I had so many aspirations and I was in IT career there. I landed in US just 1 month before 9/11. So within a month, things changed so drastically. And I had that time a choice to make whether to go back, which me seemed very easy, especially because I didn't have job. I didn't even know how my immigration is gonna work out. There were so many uncertain things. But that dream just held me there. It's like if you go back, you don't know if you'll ever come back and what happens to that dream. So that I took a chance on that. I stayed. Took me 4 years to come back to my IT jobs. In between, I was doing pizza delivery, gas station, and all that. But I got back to IT job, starting working my way up again into the IT fields, and I stayed there for another 6 years. So I stayed in US 10 years, and then after that, I felt like it was time to go back to my family. My parents were still in India. I just felt like emptiness, even though, money was good, life was good, I had friends, everything. It just started to feel a little empty. So 10 years later, I moved back, packed my bags, went to India, spent a couple of years there, and started to feel bored again. Like I'm no longer gelling into my friends and the people I lived there because of growth I had. And it's not about saying like they were behind, or it's just we were in different time spaces altogether. So I started to see what else can I do with my life. I wanted a little bit more challenge. And then an opportunity came for United Kingdoms. Our company was growing. So I then moved to UK and started doing there. And another 4 or 5 years went by. I got married. I had kids. Everything now is, kind of settling down to where what people tell you, okay, you need to have job, you need to have family, children. And then I come to this point, now what? Like you have done all the tick marks. What next? Like, and I couldn't point like my dreams. I realized in that moment that even my dreams that I had as a IT professional, those were expiring. They were dead. I didn't want to be that person anymore. And that started the search. Actually, what really propelled it was COVID. Being at home, not having social interaction, having time and not knowing what to do. And then having all of a sudden, a lot of work coming through. It just felt like I was going mindlessly towards the things without consciously seeing what's happening. And there was a moment where I saw myself questioning, if I were to die tomorrow, what would people talk about me? What did I do? What impact did I make? What legacy did I create? I didn't have much, right? Yes, I had family, I had taken care of my immediate needs, but beyond that, I could not see anything. And I was like, is that it? Am I just supposed to be this? Like, are there special people like, Dr. Martin Luther King that lived through this earth and can do a lot of impact? And I'm not denying that they are special, right? But there was part of me that's like, why cannot I be somebody who has some impact in this world? And from there, I started a journey inwards, and that's what has led us here. And the more I started to look inwards and find what ignites me, what makes me happy, and how I am changing with as my own journey and sharing that journey with others, it's just incredible amount of things automatically have changed in my environment to support that. And this is a perfect example of that. 5 years ago, this wouldn't have happened.
Right. And because of that, it's not just the growth. So you talked about the growth of having moved back and realizing that you were in a different place than the people that you were
Mm,
connected to. And that does happen to us. But then beyond that, I mean, there's so many good things in your story that we do talk about here on the podcast. And I talk about with anyone anytime that I absolutely love is sort of seeking and asking those questions like what next? Or like I love
Yeah.
what you said when you're like, is that it? Like, and that is not to deny the beauty that is, having a family and having a good career and being challenged. But I do think that going through this pandemic has elicited deeper questions than might normally be asked. And I'm here for it because
Mm,
these are very precious questions. You're talking about, going from mindless activity to seeking out meaning and purpose. And
mm,
also to your point about very special people who have changed the world, we all have it within us to change the world. Small, big, otherwise, whatever steps that we take can make a difference. And when you were describing this, kind of why can't I, it reminds me of a saying, and I cannot recall where it comes from, but it's essentially the idea that instead of saying, who am I to do that? It's saying, who am I not to?
yeah, that is beautiful. And it takes me to this quote. And I don't even know where I picked it up from. I was listening to somebody, and the person said, and this person read it in somewhere, and he didn't remember who the author was, but author said that we are destined to serve, like it is in our genes that we want to serve and make a good, make impact. Like we want to do something greater with our lives beyond ourselves,
Mm.
but we are trained to just do in a path where we just train to make money or train to do this XYZ job. So we're built for service, but we are trained for trade or money and business and all that. And as long as there is that gap, people will struggle through, and then at some point midlife crisis like mine would happen, and then you'll question, and then you'll go back to that route, which is service, right, where you'll find meaning and purpose to your life through what you can do with the people.
Yeah, I mean, and what you were talking about of checking things off the list. I checked things off the list. I checked the list. And so, that is speaking to this idea that we are looking outward for happiness and contentment and fulfillment. And, it's an inside job.
Yes. That's where all the seeking in comes in. Realization that the things that you've been chasing for, it's all fallacy, right? It's never going to be a moment where something external to you can give you a happiness or sustained happiness. You may get a moment of joy with something external, like watching your kids, watching a dog, but
Eating chocolate, just going to put that out there.
yeah, eating ice cream. But all that
Yeah.
can only give you happiness if there is something within you that is allowing. If you're like really struggling inside and you're really in tense situations, even those will make your tension worse. Like if I was doing something that I was really under pressure and really struggling to do, I wouldn't be able to see my child, my son or a daughter coming in. I wouldn't be able to see their smile. I would quite oppositely get angry for them coming into that environment. And so it's very interesting. That inside job is a big one.
That's such a good point too about how when we are really struggling and when we are in that, frustration and anger, that resentment that can come from really it's the dissatisfaction or lack of alignment, right?
Mm,
With
mm,
what we're doing, with our values and our beliefs and our dreams, and then what we're doing. When we're in that moment, we do struggle to appreciate. So I was thinking, oh, there's coping mechanisms and there's things that will make you temporarily happy, or at least that's what you think they will do, which is why we seek them out. And so I jokingly said chocolate, except not entirely a joke. I
yes.
do appreciate chocolate. However, to your point, when we are at a certain level of frustration, even that, it's almost like it will backfire. And
Mm,
I can remember a time in my life when I was a caregiver for my mom, and this is what precipitated everything that I do now, that I struggled to find the joy. And you're right, there would be moments where my children may do something brilliant and wonderful, or there could be a really funny moment, and I am there. I mean, I'm there for deep conversations and I'm there for ridiculous humor. I'm there for both.
yes.
But back then, I struggled to be, which then made me feel like I was not myself. And see, so this all ties into that struggle where this quote, it fascinates me, this idea that we're destined and meant to serve, but we're trained more for that trade. So all that to say, you and I had agreed that the big topic of the day was this idea, and we've heard the phrase of being versus doing. And I'm not trying to pit them against each other, but I would love to dig into that, to explore that. And you have told me that you've worked with some great mentors to reinvent yourself, and you're using wisdom from both spiritual texts and science. And I love that. I like some woo and some science too. So, what have you come to learn, and what can you share with us about the being and the doing?
Yeah, and it's nicely ties in with our talk being because when you are in a state of frustration, anger, or very emotional turmoil place, question is who are you being then? And that separates from doing. The first thing is when you are in that state, whoever you're being, you don't know about that. Because the minute you know that you are getting angry, the minute you know you're frustrated, the minute you are able to identify what's going inside you, you're already being, right? You are that. So, what is being, right? Being is very hard to put in words because it's an experience, it's an essence of who you really are deep within. And it sounds all airy fairy because no words can describe it, but you can experience it. And the way I come around it is so let's take two scenarios, and that would help understand what is being, what is doing. So we talked about when you're frustrated and all those emotional turmoil and you're trying to do things, that's like a doer. You're unaware of what's going inside. A being is when you're on a holiday, right? Or when you're at a party, when you are enjoying something, when you are cherishing, whether it's out taking a walk, when you are present with what is happening there, then you're not trying to be or do something. You are just there. When you're on a beach, on a perfect sunlight, you're lying down there. You're just being. You're not trying to think, oh, I need to. I mean, there may be, if you're having so many things to do in your mind, then you're not able to enjoy that moment. But if you are enjoying that perfect beach sunlight, lying down, the breeze coming through, that's just being. You are in that moment. So being in a sense is the sense of awareness with, what is happening in this moment within myself and around myself. Because when you are that aware, you are witnessing your life, you are like experiencing your life. And that's what I call as being, like you are rooted in yourself. You are aware of everything that's happening. You could hear and see your kids coming in, talking and saying, despite of what is going in your head or in your work life. That is a being. But when you are a doer, I'll give you a perfect example. A few days, I think it's a week ago, 4 o'clock in the morning, my son started to cry. He started to call, Mama, Mama. He sleeps in his own bedroom, which is just adjacent. And I had planned to get up around 4:30 to do my meditation. So 4 o'clock, he says something, and then he quiets, and then he says "Mama" again. And my wife tells me, "Could you go take care of him or sleep with him for a minute so that he sleeps?" And in my mind, my immediate reaction was, I have to do my meditation. I cannot do that. I cannot take. And it was only until later, once I put him to sleep and back to my meditation. During the meditation, I realized who I was being. I wasn't being a father. I wasn't being a husband. I was being a person who had to do meditation. I was being a doer, that I had to do this meditation. So I was overpowered what I thought in my mind I had to do. Whereas, if I was in a being state where I was calm, it just only took 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes for me to just go lie down, put him to calm. He slept and I came back and did my meditation. And I actually did it sooner than I planned. I had additional 30 more minutes, but in those 2 minutes while I was thinking why my wife is saying, I was just being some neurotic, right? And that's how I separate being and doing. Being is you're really aware of everything. You're not trying to control, you're just letting moment unfold itself. And a doer is always trying to control that moment. It wants to do the things it likes, which seldom happens. And that's our misery.
Those are excellent examples. And I think examples where I think with the doing side or being the doer, right? We can immediately, I'm checking off the list like, yep, I remember doing that. Yep, I did that.
Mhm.
Yep, yeah. I think that's easy. And then the being part, I think it's such a cool concept. And I know that I've done this intuitively, but I'm going to think
Mhm.
about it again the next time I do it when you are on vacation, because the nature of vacation allows you to step away from all the busyness and all the distraction and everything that's going on in life that kind of keeps us in that doer framework. That's a great time to explore and almost lock in. What does it feel like to have that awareness of what's happening in and around me, to be in that flow and to just kind of let it go, right?
Mhm.
One of the things in your description about doing that I wanted to bring up that has been my observation from the productivity side of it. And I did an episode, Freedom from the Hustle, because we get into this, right? Hustle culture. We want to be busy. And it's something I think that the culture encourages. But one of those pieces in there that can get so tricky that I want to bring to light is this idea that this doing, I have to go meditate. And, you're in that moment where the shoulds come out to play, right? I should do this. I need to do that. I'm supposed to. A lot of times those are derived from an identity that we have. And I think it's
Yes.
so interesting that you pointed out that the being can be an identity. You're like, I wasn't being a father in that moment. I was being a person who needed to go meditate. So if we think about getting caught up in the busy stuff, in what is that identity, sometimes I think it can be the reverse. I know as a mom, I could be like, okay, I'm supposed to make them this meal or pick them up here or do this or do that. And I have to step back and ask the question, which is it that I truly value versus that I'm saying I'm supposed to or I have to?
Yeah, yeah. Identity plays a lot of role, good and bad, everything. And the thing is, what I have come to realization is whatever I'm doing, like I'm questioning, I'm in a place these days, I'm questioning everything. Like somebody says, you should do that. Okay. But why?
Why?
Who thought of it? I was thinking about this. Other day I wrote about this is like when we are bored, like we have something against being bored, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we are bored, we need to find something to do. And then we are bored, then we need to go back to work to make money. And then work becomes so overpowering that then we need to have holidays. We plan the holiday perfect months from now.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take holidays so that we can take a holiday, we can relax and get bored, right? Whole round trip of doing, whereas I could have enjoyed if only I realized the importance of being bored. Like being bored is such a luxury. Like you
Mm.
cannot. The doer culture, the culture that tells us, like when somebody tells about hustle, people are saying work hard. Like they're saying you have to work hard. Hard work is like why? Why cannot it be joyful work? Why is it hard for work? I'm not saying don't do the work, like don't put your efforts. I'm not talking about inaction, but why do you have to hard? Like, why do you have to force it? Why cannot you do it joyfully? And it brings you to the question like, do you do the things you enjoy or do you enjoy the things you do? And it's a subtle differentiation, but it just changes everything. And I think when you get to the point where you start to question things around you, you start to become aware of what you're doing, your actions and inactions, and you question, like, where did I get it? It just starts to open up such a huge can of worms, and you start to realize, like, maybe I'm living with a lot of false things, fallacies. Maybe it worked for people before me. It does not now, not for me. And I think that's what going in and being and connecting with your beingness is that. You are questioning. You're not no longer believing in what you were given. You're like, I don't know that. I don't believe that. I just need to figure it out. I need to experience and live it through my life rather than somebody's experience.
Exactly. It goes inward. And what you're talking about when we do those questions, right? When we don't take it at face value, take it from someone else, take it from an outward source. Now you're not only stepping into that flow, you're literally playing to your strengths now. You're talking about things like, well, don't force it. How about we make it joyful work? I love to talk about working happier. It's not working harder, but working happier. And sometimes
Yeah.
people will say, work smarter, not harder. Okay. But where does the smart come from? Well, it comes from asking these questions.
Mm,
So when thinking about this being versus doing, I was sitting with this idea and I thought that, there's a saying that people say, not necessarily a mantra, but unfortunately it
mm,
becomes very common where they're like, I'm not doing enough. Do I need to do more? Do you know what I mean? It's this constantly seeking, again, activity doing, which I can immediately see is leading them straight to burnout because it's busy versus productive and satisfying. So I'm curious, when that comes up, is that a sign that we need to think, I guess, intentionally to be more versus trying to, shift to the being, I guess is how I'm trying to say it.
yeah. I think when you sense in your body, right, you'll always sense that uneasiness, that there is something being forced through in that moment. Like when somebody writes you an email that you don't agree, or it could be your boss, it could be colleague, somebody sends you, you don't agree, it's gonna do something in your body. And when you feel that uneasiness, you will be tempted to respond, whether in anger, depending on what was written. But if you could take a breath and just see, okay, what's happening? First is like, why are you feeling that emotion inside you? Question yourself, like, whatever happened, that person did whatever it did, you cannot control that. But before you respond, if you give that a space, I think one of the things that has allowed me to have a little bit of calm in my life is, which I am not saying I'm perfect, I'm still a learner on this journey, but creating some space. So when somebody writes me an email where I just want to like maybe punch them back on the for saying that or whatever, like something that evokes such an emotional reaction on me.
Mhm.
The very first stage, if you're able to become aware that it has created that reaction, that already means there is a separation between that reaction and you. And in that state, and it allows you that you can control, right? You don't have to be that reactive person. So as soon as you realize it, if you give it a space, and space does not mean you need to leave it for hours, just take a few deep breaths, recognize what's happening within yourself, and then responding knowingly that whatever they did, they did. But your real meditation, like this is your meditation, is like, who are you being when you're writing that email? It does not matter who that person was, what they said. And this is where ego comes in. Like your ego wants to respond, like, let me show you who I am, right? Going to that identity. How dare you said that to me, right? But when you are aware, you can listen to your ego, you can give it a room to play, you can breathe, and then you can connect to your being and you can come up with a response. Because in that moment, only thing that matters, or only thing that is your response, or sorry, only thing that is your responsibility is your response. Like, how do you respond? Because the way you respond, that is where you're being who you are being with yourself. Because if I react and say 10 nasty things back, it's not how he's gonna receive it. It's just gonna impact my, like, it's gonna, those nasty things are gonna live with me for certain hours, days. So rather than responding from that ego, if you're able to just connect back to the space that is calm, peaceful, that is in a way your true nature, right? You will realize pretty soon that it does not matter what he said, because that's not true reflection of who you are. So it's a long winged answer, but it all goes back. Add space, connect to yourself, and see how you respond to that same moment.
You're speaking my language, adding space. I talk about this all the time, right? When we create the space that we need, it gives us a space to process our emotions. I talked about this with Kristen Kubik and emotions and intuition and, what's going on there. But with all of this, we need time to reflect and we need the space to process and to understand. It's not only finding the meaning in our lives, but the meaning in the moments of our lives. And you've just given us one exceptional question to ask. I'm going to start doing that. So my question for you was going to be, and I think you've answered it, how we let one inform the other, the balance and the harmony of being and doing. And I think in your question, you've actually answered this of saying, I'm about to do something, right? Whatever it is, whether it's a response to something or an action, or maybe making a choice of what to do next. Who am I being when I do that? And you're talking about alignment to our true, like a true reflection of ourselves. That's all alignment to our values, to our personality, to our purpose, right?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Because when you ask that question, it immediately separates you from that situation, right? Whatever that person did, because now it's not about them, it's about you. Who am I being? Am I being the person I say I am? That is, am I being calm, responding? Am I being somebody who's loving, caring? It does not matter who the other person is. Am I in this moment? When you come from that space, it changes everything. You're able to see the things you otherwise your ego would cloud and your anger would, or any other emotion would cloud, because of that space, because of recognizing there is a separation between what's happening and who you are actually. I was reminded of this story that I don't know if you've heard of Ram Dass. He's a spiritual teacher in 1960s, 70s. He lived. So one of the things, his way of, and this is a little bit on the spiritual side, like introducing, when you're saying who I am being and separating, you're sort of becoming witness of your life. And so he used to give an example. He said, imagine there is a gray cloud, like there's a cloud and there is a sky. There's a picture of cloud in the sky. But the cloud it's a big cloud, and there's only a little bit of sky in that picture. Now, if you try to frame that into a frame that is not of the full size of that picture, you're gonna eventually do is you're gonna cut around the edges, and the sky is gonna left out, and it's just all of a sudden the gray thing. It's just a gray area. When you're in the gray area, everything is cloud. It just seems like empty. You cannot see what's happening, right? But the minute you expand that frame and you're able to see that tiny blue spot, and you are able to say, oh, this is a cloud. It's not a reality. It's just a cloud. This is my thought. And that is what beingness is, just that little blue spot, that little blue thing. That's a witness that can witness this moment as it is, not what your mind is projecting it to be, but it can show you what it is. But that can only happen if your frame is big enough to let that sky come in to show you, okay, this is cloud, this is not the sky.
Oh, that's such a good metaphor. It's definitely described in a beautiful kind of spiritual way, but really, what you're talking about is big picture perspective.
Yes.
And being able to step back out, step back in, being able to, the phrase you used is becoming witness of your life.
Mm-hmm.
How beautiful is that? Because that allows you all of this, everything that we're talking about, the perspective, the space to ask the questions, to make the choices, to touch back to what's a true reflection of you. That's all about making an informed choice. We talk about this all the time. And the other thing we talk about all the time on the podcast that you were describing is being curious, right? We're not judging and we're not saying, why are you being this way or what's going on? We're being curious. Okay, what's going on here? And what is, like you said, the truth of the situation and not simply our reaction or immediate perception.
Yes, that's it.
Anyone else feeling really calm right now? I'm feeling really calm. I knew it. I knew that this would be such a good conversation to reduce our stress and to give us I really, truly a new perspective on how we can step into days that often do feel chaotic and busy
Mm,
and demanding. And the fact of the matter is that we don't even need true space in our schedule to be able to take on the space that we need, because the space that we are creating comes from the choice of saying, hang on, let me step back.
yeah, that's beautiful. I was just a couple days ago, and this is what witness does. It's so eloquently happens, and it just happens. You start to find moments and you laugh at yourself. I was getting ready and I had a list of things that I wanted to do. And so I think I was just wearing my shirt. I was putting my shirt on and I was thinking in my mind, after this, I should go and record my podcast. This was me, my mental mind is saying, right? Exactly in a minute, like in that moment, there was like, so I said, I'm going to go record the podcast right after this. And then the immediate next sentence was, or maybe I won't. And it made me laugh, right? Maybe I won't
Or
that
not,
space, yeah, or not.
or not. I love that phrase.
That permission, that or not, like that, I'm not in a rush, that I don't need to do it, right? I don't have to be the doer. If that moment calls in for me to record, like it's not inaction, it's just feeling, going with what people say as a flows. But that just simple or not statement just changed my mood entirely. I was no longer in rush. I was calm. I was joyful, and I went and recorded episode a lot more joy and peace because I didn't have to feel that rush. And that's what the beauty of when you are being in control. The thing is, what I'm realizing more and more is what our mind is like. If I tell myself I'm going to get up tomorrow morning early XYZ time, 99 out of 100 times my mind is going to give that nudge. Okay, wake up. It will tell you. So my mind is my assistant. It's supposed to be my assistant. But the thing about the mind is that assistant, it can be really irritating. Like when you're not doing things that you said you will do, it irritates you. Like, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this. And that gentle reminders can become frustrations themselves very quickly.
Mhm.
And if you're not in control, if you're not being, your mind becomes your boss. Right now, the mind is running the show. It's telling you what to do, when to do, how to eat, how not to eat, how to speak. And that sort of is the reason of your misery in your life, because you've given your power to your mind, which is supposed to be your assistant, which was supposed to take order. Remind me I need to do this thing. Remind me I need to do this thing. But when it starts to go from those reminders to the orders, do this now, or the thing is, most people, most of the times, we don't even ask, or what? Right? The minute you ask, or what, fades away. But you're not in that place to ask that, or what. You're in this place. Okay, I need to hear to these whispers. I need to listen and do all these things because we don't even know why.
Right. Oh, that I have to do, right? Or I'm supposed to, or I have to. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite things to do in coaching is to be like, let's talk it through. Let's go worst case
Mm,
scenario. What's going to happen? And when you actually play through and you're like, oh, all right. Well, no, that's not great, but oh, okay. Oh, it really does. It releases you from that demand. But more than anything, what you're talking about is our mind becoming our boss. Yeah.
yes.
Mm,
Yes. It's a what if question. Like it's a thing that I used to do a lot. What if this fails? What if I do this? This is gonna fail. Like I had so many what ifs without before I would take actions, and
right.
that created so much of indecisiveness, and it still does. But the minute I'm able to replace that what if it with so what, it just changes. It's still the same question. So what if I fail? Like it just gives me power. It's a reframe, but it's a lot more powerful reframe. I'm coming from like, okay, so what, she leaves me. So what if I miss my meditation? So what if it's like world is not gonna end? And the worst thing, if you're gonna die, like if that is the dire scenario, so what? You're gonna die. That be the end of it. You don't know after that, right?
Yeah, that was coming anyhow. So all you can do is the best you can in this moment. And what you're talking about, permission it's a sticky wicket for me because I wish we didn't need it, but for some reason it seems we do. And so if that's the case, then allow it, then go with it and just give yourself the freedom. And you know what? It all comes back to is choice. And isn't that a beautiful thing?
The permission is big one. I was listening to, I think it was Tony Robbins or some other coach who mentioned that 99% of the times on the calls or the coaching calls, all that the people need is just the permission. They're seeking for somebody higher authority that you can go do it, screw it up, mess it up. It'll be fine.
Very
That
true.
permission is a big one.
So guess what? You've just been given it today.
Yes.
So take and run with it. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with as we step away today and we think about this in a new light of the who am I being while I'm doing the things? You talked about making space, asking the questions, and those are great first steps. Is there anything else you want to leave us with as we do this?
I would say the biggest thing you can do for yourself, and which I saw with myself, was creating time for yourself. When I say creating time for yourself, which can be scary these days because we are so busy, being busy, we have to have either the iPhones or our gadgets or Netflix or food or talking, exercising. We have to be doing that. We are forgetting the power that being doing nothing gives. Because when you're able to give you that spot where you're just not doing anything, just sitting with yourself, it gives you such a fresh perspective of everything. Like, it allows you the time that you need to question what is happening in your life and also become witness. Like, you can see what's happening, but you cannot do that if you don't allow. So the one thing that I'm really precious about is asking people to start their day with something that they love. It does not matter. It's not about the time. It does not matter you to give yourself 5 minutes or an hour. But if you get up first 5 minutes, I'm not going to touch the phone. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to sit, breathe, listen to music or read something if you want, if you're a reader, but do something for yourself. Because the minute you make yourself priority, everything else starts line up yourself. And it's not going to happen the day when I can tell you. It's a practice like anything, but it will connect you to the places that you didn't know existed in yourself.
I needed to leave space for that just to be, because that is advice that I am behind 1,000%. If that's a thing, if that can be a thing, I want it to be a thing because I am behind it so much. Thank you. All right. That is a beautiful place for us to wrap up. I know that you are now doing a podcast. You are sharing stories, connecting with people. Where can we find you online to connect with you?
LinkedIn is the most prominent space where I am, that people can find me. I have the podcast, it's on, which I'll share the link. But I guess by far LinkedIn is easier. One of the things that I'm currently working on is fear, because that has stopped me a lot. So I'm actually recorded a very first episode in it today on my podcast, but I'm going to be coming up with something more tangible ways to work with the fear, because I saw that those fears stopped me a lot on my ways. And I could have been doing the things that I'm doing now 10 years sooner, only if I wish, but recognizing that fear, how much it holds. So this is something really exciting for me to work on myself and then be able to use with the people. So, as if people follow me in LinkedIn, they will be able to see these tools coming on very soon.
I will make sure to have these links in the show notes so you can easily connect. And now, are you ready to have a little fun with a rapid wrap up with me?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I'd love you to fill in the blank for me, please. A song that lifts my spirits, makes me dance is?
So the one that I'm lifting my spirit right now is a song called Nature by Ram Dass. And it's just basically the beauty of the song is he's just verbalizing. This is after he had his stroke and he is challenged. He cannot speak. So there's a lot of space between his words,
Mhm.
but there is a beautiful music that fills up that space. So Nature by Ramdas is a beautiful one.
Wonderful. Is that something you could send me a link to?
Yes.
Brilliant. I may put that in the show notes just to make it easy for us to access. Okay. How about a quote or a mantra that inspires me? I like to share often.
Mantra that I'm living right now, or that came to me during one of my meditation, and that I want to aspire or imbibe is love, serve, unite. So that's sort of like motto that I want to project love, I want to serve, and I want to unite people back to their beingness.
That's beautiful. Okay. How about a resource? It could be a book, an app, just anything that has made my life better.
Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a neuroscientist for people who don't know, but he has made a lot of discoveries and he's brought to light a lot of spiritual wisdom, but with the medium of science, the language of science, and actually exploring the spiritual wisdom that was there for thousands of years. So he's definitely the one.
Oh, you had me at neuroscientist. I'm immediately there. Okay, I'll find his information, add that as well.
I'll send you that link also.
Wonderful. Okay, and last but most certainly not least, what are you grateful for today, Manpreet?
I'm grateful for this conversation. This was beautiful. It made me calm. I'm grateful for having the witness in my life where I can have or not moments. So that's really something I'm grateful as we sit here, that I am able to experience life being there in the moment and saying or no to the things that really don't matter.
So true. Well, oh my goodness, I am most certainly grateful for you and that we could connect like this, that we could share with each other and now share with the listeners, and to be in this together as teammates to love, serve, and unite. So I want to thank you for shining your light in this world and for sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much. I am so privileged that I shared this moment. The one thing that I would say as a part is that I recognize as I started to get in my journey of seeking who I was, I started to recognize that being conscious and intentional, the kind of people that started to show up and that I started to invite in my life were the people that would enrich my life. And there was going to be a lot more deeper connections with those people and a lot longer lasting connections. And this is what I felt with our dialogue today, that there is a deeper meaning. Like, I know you before I knew you, kind of thing. And I maybe airy fairy, but I just felt that coming through this moment. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
I'm honored to do so. Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.